Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome to our monthly readitation call. Great to see everyone. And I'm very excited about what we're going to be doing today, just sharing some of our readings and how they shift us. That's the exciting part, to see how that happens. And so we can multiply so many times by sharing them. So first I want Ron to say hello.
Hi, everyone. It's always a pleasure to join together with those of us who are adventurers of the written word. And because this is a special group, we also know that it is the space between the words that we treasure as well as an opening to everything that we don't know that we already know. And that is one of the beauties of readitation. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. Because I'm recording this, I want to just explain what it is that we do. So Readitation is a Facebook group where people just post many different quotes and things that they love and things that give them inspiration, quotes and insights. And also, this is a text group for those who want to be in a text group. And there is a text group that reads most days. We're kind of thinking every day. Some people do it every day. Some people do it once a month. But whatever time you do it is fine. And it's a text group on a WhatsApp. And we find a time when we're reading, and when we sit down to read, we text the text group, just saying we're starting. So it's kind of a connection. And it's a really amazing connection, actually. And then we read 30 minutes. Now, readitation is meditative reading. So it's a reading that is not for knowledge. It's a reading that is for being. So you pick a book, whatever book you want. Very often we all kind of share books because they come up and people say they're reading something wonderful, and I get to read it. And for 30 minutes, we may read one sentence and sit with it. We may read one sentence and meditate. We may read one sentence and contemplate. These are all very subtle feels. And or we may read the entire time, depending on the book and what we're doing. So, and when we finish, if we feel like it, we go back to the app and maybe share something we've read, put in a quote or say something else about how we are, feeling or what's happening for us in terms of insights. So that's what we're doing. So it's kind of a meditative reading connected community. And I think that there's a great value in that. I think it changes the readitation experience to do it with others. So having said that, we just want to start. Ron and I want to share with you just a little meditation. We've been doing these doodles and poems because I did doodles and Ron did poems, and we started working together. It's been a really wonderful process of working together. It's sort of like, when you do something and a lot of you are artists, you do it and then you feel this is great, I love it. Well, Ron and I do that till we both love it, which when two people love the same thing, it's a big deal. Especially if they're husband and wife. That is a really big deal. So I'd like to share one with you that we can just ponder upon, and then we'll start our sharing. Okay. So somebody was speaking earlier on this call about waking up in the morning. Ron, you want to read it? You have to unmute yourself.
my, face to face. I woke this morning and everything around was you, staring at me, unflinching. All right then, who is going to blink first?
Okay. Yes, thought we would start with that since we spoke about waking up this morning. So what we're doing today is if you have a reading, something that you read, and you want to tell us about it, you want to read a portion of it, and then just, share with us what that did for you, like what happened, how that moved you. And then we'll kind of build up on each one a little bit. So we just won't go from person to person. We'll stay on one and build it up a little bit, interact with it. Okay, so who would like to start? Raise your hand. You can raise your hand on the Zoom or in your hand. Anne Marie.
All right, I'll be bold. What moved me the last, and I wanted to share it with you, is from the book, by Alan Watts. And he talks about what a problem nouns are. And I just found that to be so profound. And it reminded me of the blink, as what's looking at us is that everything is everything. We're all energy, one continuum. And nouns mess us up because we think that it is a thing, rather than how he puts this. Why can't we think of people as peopling, of brains as braining, or an ant as anting? A church is housing religiously. A shop is housing tradingly. A home is housing homely. Yet we are habituated to ask, who or what is housing? Who peoples? What is that ant? So it's our language. In our language is built-in separation, and just hearing that helped me to find oneness and non-separation.
Thank you. So let's stay on this for a few minutes. Emery, do you want to read it again just one more time?
Sure. I'll continue. Yet isn't it obvious that when we say the lightning flashed, the flashing is the same as the lightning, and that it would be enough to say there was lightning? So here's the point. Everything labeled with a noun is demonstrably a process or action, but language is full of spooks, like the it in "it is raining," which are the supposed cause of action.
Well, I'd love to say something about that. So beautiful. I love that book. Alan Watson, I knew about him when I was, I don't know, 20s, in my 20s and 30s. Yeah, we are a verb. We are not a noun. We are not a noun. And so it's not like the this is an object. This is how I hear it. And it does help me a lot because it takes me away. Because we are a verb. Like I could say, I am seeing all of you. And that would, then you would have to ask, well, who am I? Is the body seeing all of you? Is the mind seeing? What is seeing all of you? Are these eyeballs seeing all of you? These eyeballs, physical eyeballs, they're being used for sure, but who is seeing all of you? And so, you know, it goes to the point perhaps where there's not a person is a noun. A person is seeing. That's a person is seeing, noun, verb, sentence. Or there's just seeing. Conscious awareness seeing. It's just seeing. They're seeing. There's no one seeing. There's just seeing. There's just being. It's a big breath. Craig.
I was looking out the window just a few minutes before she read this, and I was in my mind. I just thought, wow, it's clearing outside. And then as Emery was reading that like the phrases that I always say, it's hot, it's getting cold, it's sunny. But then if I trace that back, like it is sunny out. What is it? It's true. It's never like it's built into language that it's very subtle because in some ways I believe I know what that means, right? I'm not saying there's in my thinking process, there's no it but that's really what it's implying. That's really what the language is implying, that there is a thing out there it is now getting sunny out where before it was raining.
Yeah, where is that it?
Where is that it? It's hungry.
It's always something. Anybody else? Ron?
I love the book, and I think Anne-Marie or Wendy, I don't remember who, I think it was Anne-Marie who recommended it. And by the way, that's one of the great virtues of readitation, is people recommend books that you don't know. And some of them are just mind-bogglingly important, become so important. There are several examples, maybe I'll mention later. But going back to that reading, it's a funny kind of positioning to say it is peopling. It is peopling. Yes, it pulls you back in looking at an activity of unity. It does that. But at the same time, even further back, more interior, is this simple act of observation and the realization that observation, awareness, is totally innocent until we fill it in like a doll's house with thoughts and memories and sensations. The act of observation, which this is pointing to, is absolutely virgin until we fill it in with God knows what. So even to say it is peopling is wonderful. It gives us a different experience of a totality, of whole. But it still doesn't recognize the purity of that is beyond it. Simple awareness, which has no further need for descriptors that we arbitrarily or by training or by programming add to it. So I love this play that Alan Watts introduces. And at the same time, I sort of dance with it in different ways, which is I love about readitation, by the way. It's experiential.
So let's go, let's see. Who wants to go next? Yeah, because we could say I am seeing, but it's so, I don't know what the word is. It's something to know that I am the seeing. I am the seeing, the actual seeing. That's what I am. My hair isn't seeing, something is seeing. The I am that's seeing is not a body or a mind. And certainly, it's not really a feeling, not really a feeling. So it's that seeing. Anyway, that was beautiful. Thank you, Anne Marie. Anybody next?
Well, I just wanted to say that reminds me of You Are the Tastiness of the Dish, by Dr. His name is leaving me.
Kenneth Mills, yeah.
Mills.
Kenneth Mills.
Kenneth Mills.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so this is new to me here. I thank you for welcoming me in. I also have to just preface by saying that I have problems with my eyes, so I'm not much of a reader. I listen, and therefore I listen to Alan Watts every Sunday morning for years, way back in the 70s and early 70s and on. Anyway, what's occurring to me to say in terms of my level of contemplation is that we've used language as one tool to expand our understanding. And now, through people like Alan Watts and many people now, as we are still expanding, we're using language to reunify ourselves instead of separating. Because Anne Marie, you brought out a wonderful point about how language, when it was developed, was designed to separate. And we needed to separate in our globalness of consciousness expanding. And so now consciousness, this is the way I see it, consciousness is expanding to look at language and look at the limitations of that so that we can expand to the global oneness that we, probably everybody here and more that we know, are on a journey to really better understand. And so I feel like there's been a purpose in all of this. And it's wonderful that we've got this kind of a venue to be able to come together and explore that what is no longer serving us as our consciousness expands. And so that we can actually move to a place, and maybe we have to develop another language or not speak at all. I have found, I think that I already ran this one by you, Victoria, is that there a while back, I think I can remember a conversation we were having, how there are certain times when I'm talking that I'm not me. And at that time, I refer to myself as this one here. And so I found myself as trying to use language to honor this one, the one who's talking, but say that there's something that's going beyond this one's talking, and that I'm just one. I don't know. I don't know if that makes much sense. but it is I get surprised when suddenly I refer in a whole string of conversations, this one here comes out, and then I listen differently.
Mm.
Beautiful, Linda, absolutely. If anybody can look at Linda, when she's speaking, behind her, you see these flags. And Linda is this incredible artist and color. She's a color being. She's coloring. Linda is,
I'm a what?
you're coloring. You're the verb called coloring.
Thank you. Just checking.
And she has these flags that are used in many ceremonies. And it's just an entire color-filled, poetic, beautiful whole thing. In Unity Earth, these are used in the ceremonies and everything. It's just
Yeah.
a huge teaching. And
I call these the flags of one family. And actually they help symbolize the fact that we're all here together to work in harmonious collectiveness. Anyway, so yes, this conversation today is when I came up with this in 1984. These are the flags that unite as opposed to separate. So more of late, as the world is looking at what keeps us separate, I say, well, these flags came in to help us see that we're not separate. And so I began to do a deeper inquiry into exactly what is it that's keeping us separate? And of course, language is part of it, and how we've been trained. And then I had to step back and say, well, there was a purpose in that. If we've used it to bring us to this point, and now we're expanding beyond that purpose. And we're the ones that are to do, I don't even have the language on it. We are the ones that, well, maybe we just have to know that we're talking on many levels at one time.
I think we are the one.
Yes.
Perhaps we are
Yeah. This one here instead of I or mine.
here. I'm going to
Yeah.
call you that from now on.
You mean that one there?
No, this one here. This one here.
You know what? That's a great idea.
This one here.
Yes.
There's
And,
George.
and Victoria, that's beautiful, because what that does is it takes us by surprise, and then we have no other choice once beyond the surprise to know that we're all one by using that simple shift in language.
Absolutely. It's a choiceless choice.
No,
There's no choice because it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Victoria, I have to come in here for a
Yes, of
moment
course.
because these are wonderful comments. I mean, really. It reminds me of the American indigenous language. What they describe is an activity to describe an individual. For example, we have used the same method to describe our cat as flying fur.
Yeah.
But they did. I mean, this was part of their tradition, is to describe someone by some activity that is associated with that person. So these are interesting connections.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, on we go. Anybody else want to share? Oh, Wes, Wendy, good to see you. Okay, she's off.
Hi there.
Hi.
Good to see you all this morning.
You-
Yeah, I'm happy to share. What I chose for today was the poem. It's Fear by Khalil Gibran that I just love and adore. Yeah, it's the flow of who we are and where we're going and where we think we're going. Of course, we know we're not going anywhere but here, but in this moment, here's the poem. Fear. It is said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled, from the peaks of the mountains, the long winding road crossing forests and villages. And in front of her, she sees an ocean so vast that to enter, there seems nothing more than to disappear forever. But there is no way back. The river cannot go back. Nobody can go back. To go back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean, because only then will fear disappear, because that's where the river will know it's not about disappearing into the ocean, but by becoming the ocean. I love this poem. It's like the journey of whatever this is we are on is more than me, and that is a huge thing to get over in our culture. And we're talking about language. We're talking about this whole idea of the I. You know, that there's this I that has to achieve something, this I that has to do something. We're set up like that. Our structures are set up, right? Each one of us has to earn our own money. Each one of us has to do our own work, la, la, la. And yet it's an orchestra. I mean, we are not just one of us. And when we limit our reality and discussion to one person or one person's perspective, at least for me, I get in deep trouble. You know, the language is so, I love how we're talking about language. Thanks, Anne-Marie, for tipping us off into that, and Linda for shining us up. And I just think that that is something that is so wonderful to learn, that even the words I speak with here, to even hear a poem, sometimes differentiate one thing from another, right? I mean, to see the picture is to see from many different perspectives. And I guess for me, I understand the one to be multi-perspectival, that there's no one perspective. There are many, because we are one. And you know, and in the context of that, though, the one is what's important. How am I serving that in my life? And how am I serving that through how I choose to be in the world with people? I remember standing on a conference floor as a minister and having to take the entire denomination through a lesson of inclusive language on the floor to change every single word of the guiding documents of that denomination. It was just like, wow. And we stood for hours, and it was the women, sorry guys, who led it and said, we will inclusify this language. We belong, and it needs to, we need to see ourselves in it, as well as our male masculine side, I guess, is because I want to say it's all in us, you know, masculine, feminist in me. But at that time, it was so concrete, and it was just like, until we get this language down, we can't possibly continue to worship together.
Wow.
This divides people. This sets somebody off. And as long as we set somebody off as being the problem, we're in trouble. We're not in the one, and we're not becoming the ocean. And so how do we do that? How do we change this language of ours? Because it still is that. It's very us versus them. I mean, we almost can't talk about something without saying they're not it. And it's like, wow, won't that be a wonder to change the language? And for maybe that'd be part of our readitation. How to figure that out? What would that be like?
Nice.
You know, what would it be like? Because our challenge today is so many people have not understood this, what we're talking about. And that's causing increased pain and agony and derision and things that are just not, well, kind as we would be in the one. And it's, so how do we do that? I think that's an amazing point. I think it's until people, like till all of us, somehow we'd have an inclusion process. How do we really say that in a way that is open for everyone? Because until all know that they can become the ocean, because our language tells them they can, it's tough. it's tough because we can even see, we who understand that can be seen as exclusionary. So it's very interesting how that goes. For
Yeah,
me.
what you're saying, Wendy, how can we do it? Of course, you know, that's the question. And it's also interesting in that beautiful poem how afraid the river is. The river is very afraid to go into the ocean. I don't know, but from geography, I don't think rivers have a choice. It's not like they can go upstream. I mean, they kind of, rivers, I don't know, rivers just flow and then they are going to go into the ocean eventually, or I don't know what. But if a river is going to the oceans, it's not up to the river. That's the first thing I'm thinking of. So if it's a natural thing for that river to go into the ocean, why would that river, can we talk just a little bit why we think that river would be so fearful? I don't know. I mean, why is the river so fearful of going into the ocean? Why isn't it like, yay, I'm going to go on a big slide like the kids, you know, in the park, the water slide, you go on the water slide, then boom, you're in the big pool. So why is the river afraid? Yeah, Linda.
So think of when that was written and who was writing it and who was listening. And I feel like you have to speak into the listening. And that poem got people to look at themselves. That I refer to that as an making it projecting the human condition onto the river, which Victoria, you just said it. The river is not the human condition. I mean, the river does what it does, and it doesn't have the fear. But that poem was designed to use the words to help people connect with the idea of letting go of fear. So it was used as a tool.
Mhm.
And I think can be sure that he did not think that the river had fear. He was using that as a communication tool.
Okay. Let's see, who hasn't been in here? Jordan, do you want to come in? That question, just to go back to that, like in terms, well, yeah, I mean, the river does not have fear because the river isn't human, but what we are is not human. So what has the fear? And why would there be fear of entering this magnificent space of the ocean? What do you think, Jordan? Do you have anything for that?
So, every river has its unique journey, and it's going from a source to another source. And along the way, I think it has a sort of independence to it. And then to basically, I'll let go into a larger source. I think that's when I think of like the human condition. I think that's part of it is losing your independence, your autonomy, your familiar surroundings. And there's I guess there's fear around that, even though you don't really lose your independence. You're just becoming something larger and greater than yourself.
Truly, yeah. I think that, yes, I think that's I think it's interesting because in the story, the river thinks of itself as a river, and there's something else called the ocean. So the river is still feeling separate. The river says, I'm a person. I'm a separate individual, independent, powerful controlling the universe person. You know, so I'm a person, and then there is this huge field of consciousness. So the river thinks it's a river, and it doesn't think it's the ocean. It's going into something that is not itself. I would definitely be afraid. I think the person is always afraid of that because, why? Let me see, because that person does not know that they're in an illusion, that we are an illusion, that we are a person. We're an illusion of that. So of course, the river is an illusion that it's a river, because the river is water and the ocean is water. And if the river recognized its identity as water, it could never fear the ocean. It'd be like coming home to mother. It would just be being embraced. And there would be no separation. It would be a flow of diversity playing around to come back to this water color, you know, this water, because it's all water. But as long as the river thinks it's a river, I think there's naturally is going to be fear. Who wants to give up what we think we are? It's really, we're not giving it up, it just never existed. We'd have to see through it. The river would have to see that it's always been water, and there's water all over, and everything is water. Something like that. Ron?
I have to say, over the years of my so-called spiritual journey and during my inquiries, many times the inquiry has come to a certain point.
Can you put yourself any louder? Is everybody having trouble with Ron's sound?
Yeah, he's a little quiet.
I will try again, but this is,
We have to fix your sound on the video. Okay.
anyway, many times during inquiry in my spiritual journey, I've come to a point of being on the edge of a precipice. The inquiry actually brought me to a point of fear, because there was a realization of the possible death of everything I thought I was. And it was experienced as fear. And I've had this several times, especially when the inquiry goes deep. So I know this fear that he's talking about. And I think it is an experience on the spiritual journey when we come close to the realization that I, the lower I, does not exist in the way that I've thought about it. So that's one thing. But the other thing I want to mention about what Wendy's talking about, Melinda and Anne-Marie and all of us, is this is what Dr. Mills was talking about all the time. He said words are important, and everything about his unfoldments and what he wanted from his students was to speak from that place, that positioning that knows that it is the ocean, not the stream. And that means, in order to speak that way, and I think it would be a wonderful exercise to see what words we can use, but underlying all the words, what he pointed to was the realization of our identity. And when that is there, and we speak as that, which is rare, which is truly rare, then I think we have answered the question of the common language, because we're speaking from one I, higher I, to another I, and the communication is instantaneous, which it happens anyway in ordinary life when we meet someone. But aside from that, speak as the ocean, know that you are the ocean, and speak from there.
Well, yeah, that was actually, that was the practice in that teaching with Kenneth Mills. You actually had, you couldn't say, you could say, there's a sense of depression in me. That is completely, relatively true. But if we were to say, I am depressed, one time my son actually called him and said, I'm depressed. And he said, are you what you appear to be? and they both laugh for 10 minutes. Are you what you appear to be? This could be depressed. This could be depressed. But conscious awareness, think about it, awareness, the awareness that we always had, like in the beginning, we were baby through everything, through all the events, this awareness that was there, that what's going on is never depressed. So I want to share something from my reading that kind of says that it's about watercolor. So it's fine that Linda's here today with a watercolor, and just trying to get on here to read it to you. Okay, so this is Rupa Spira, or Spira, I'm not sure about his name. It's a big favorite of mine in terms of non-duality. He explains it very, very clearly in many different ways, and a million videos. He's on YouTube a lot, and 15 minutes, and there's some questions, and he always clarifies some little point to me of what it is like to identify oneself as consciousness or water or emptiness. So in this particular thing, he's telling us what it's like. He's telling this, it's called The Unveiling of Myself. The book is called Being Myself, just being myself. So what he's talking about in here is in a watercolor. If you all know about watercolor, you know, it's an art form, very, very, very sensitive, beautiful art form. I could never do it. I was an art major, I could never watercolor. You have to be it has to just be something you can do. And in watercolor, the paper that the watercolor on is very important. The watercolor is very thin and goes on the paper, it's watery. And the texture of the paper sometimes shows through. So that's the beauty, the transparency, the quality of the paper and the watercolor. So he says, we are the paper. So this is how he says it. He says, the sense of being myself, or the knowledge I am, is a little patch of white paper in the painting of experience. A little patch of white paper in the painting of experience is an opening to a portal to our essential self, being or self, the ever-present background of all experience. The paper is, of course, present not only in the little patch of sky, but throughout the entire painting, just as our own being is present not only in the knowledge I am, but as a background for all experience. Our being pervades all experience. So what he was showing here is, and I'm going to share with you a watercolor painting. He's saying he was looking at a watercolor painting, and the painting was a landscape. And in this landscape, there was a spot of light. And he said, wow, that's so pretty there, that light comes through. Then he looked closely, and it was a place where the artist had not painted. Artists sometimes leave little areas in watercolor that they don't paint because they use the paper as radiance coming through. And that's what he's saying. He's saying we're that radiance. The watercolors are life, all experience. But we're the paper. So the paper never changes. But the experience is so close to us. It like a movie on a screen. It permeates us. So I've always been very interested in what is experience in relationship to the field of consciousness. What is my experience? What is this thing that's going through depression and being unhappy in the morning and getting these thoughts and that thoughts and move from here? What is that in relationship to this thing, this substance that never goes away? It's always with us. So just want to show you this watercolor for fun. See if we can see that. So, so see how watercolor is done. See, it's just amazing. If you watercolor, I don't know if Linda watercolors. Those are little brush strokes, little tiny brush strokes in the paper, and the brush goes on them. Now, if you could see the paper. See the paper in that sky? That's the paper underneath. And see how it comes through. See these little lights. And see how here you lose it. You lose the paper. Some watercolor can be very thick, and the paper goes away because this is the experience. This is our life, all in here. But that little patch of very light coming through there, that's that paper coming through. And that is what we are. That is how he's explaining that. He says, experience eclipses being. Experience eclipses being. All that is necessary is to allow being to outshine experience. We need to, he says, turn our attention, or turn around, a look at our being, and keep looking for that. If we go deeper into experience, we're just going further away from being. So whatever the experience is not to negate it in any way. Look how beautiful it is, or how ugly it could be, but it's still experience, and the only thing that is real. So anything, Kenneth Mill said, anything that comes and goes, anything that changes is not real, and only the what is there always, the water is always that's what they're looking for in space. They're looking for water, you know. So I want to share that if anybody wants to pick up on that in terms of watercoloring. Craig.
Yeah, I don't know anything about watercoloring, but the symbolic representation of it, of a very sensitive, the precision and the beauty of it, and using the medium of water to interact, right? Because like what water is, it takes the shape of whatever form it's encased in. And if it's not encased in any form, it has no shape. So that's just a thought of, but I like that image, or that idea of that it's, I don't know how he said it. It's a small white paper in the backdrop of all experience, which is beautiful. I remember there's somebody, Joel Goldstein, we called our lives when we look at our lives, it's a parenthesis in eternity. It's just one little snapshot, but actually, not to use associative thinking. When you were showing that, remind me of something. I went to MoMA for the first time. And I'm not, as much as I'm into art and creativity and music, I never really had an interest going to see paintings. I didn't really care about it. And I never understood Jackson Pollock. I would see his paintings and I go, this is a bunch of scribbling, right? And I just didn't get it. And I saw the movie and I loved the movie about him, but I just didn't get his paintings. And I went with my girlfriend last year and we're walking around the corner. I could feel just in talking about this, right? I turned the corner and I saw this 50-foot painting, and it was so intense. And it was so intense because it was this stark white canvas, and on that were all of these, was just pure experience. It was, I said it was him, but it was not him. You're not him as a being, but it was just pure expression. It was everything. It was the scope of life. And it was just this, it was so resonant that it like hit me from like 20 feet back. It was like a real serious force field. The relationship, as you're saying that, between what we think of as our individual experience and against that stark white canvas was so powerful that it actually forced me into it stopped my mind. It was just a pure response to it. I want to say it was a feeling, but it wasn't feeling in the way I think of feeling. It was, I just suddenly, my breath was much larger. Everything slowed down. I had less thoughts in my head, and time seemed to stand still. It was so intense. So amazing.
Amazing. That's beautiful.
So-
Jackson Pollock, I'm going to go look for it. Linda.
So you were, Craig, you were experiencing it in the scale in which it was meant to be experienced. But most of us don't get to the museum to see it at that level, and we're looking at an object.
Yeah.
You see, so it was an immersive experience, and that's what you were viscerally affected by it. It's beautiful. I love the way you explained that.
Yeah. An immersive experience. That's an interesting kind of statement. What is an immersive experience for us? An immersive experience. That's really, whoa. I don't know, that speaks to me. Okay, so who hasn't, let's see. Jordan, did you have something to share with us that you're reading?
You know, when I went up to New Hampshire, I took along Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, because I don't have internet access up there, so I can't access my Kindle.
Love that.
So I needed a hard copy. And I hadn't read it in a while. So just going back to it, you know, you know, when we're talking about language and all of that, you know, the mind wants to grab onto any little nugget it can. And, you know, as they introduce the book, they talk about how the book came to be. It was translated from some talks. So they're, you know, they have to take it from a different language, and then it's, you know, it's coming through a translator and then onto the paper itself. So I thought that was interesting in reading it, and how, you know, I'm processing it from that, you know, from the original source through my mind, my own thoughts and feelings, and then, you know, wanting to read it or feel it in a different way. And he talks about, just trying to recall what you know, he's trying, I guess, in one passage, he's trying to lead us to that spot and within ourselves, the deeper well within ourselves. And that you can read something and you can take something from that, but ultimately it has to go to a place within yourself where you're the teacher, where I don't know how he describes it. Where you're the translator of this, of your experience. You know, they can point you in many different ways to that experience, but ultimately you somehow need to, on a soul level, you need to translate that for yourself.
I love that book, Jordan. Thank you so much. And just a funny story. I took that book to Costa Rica with me once. It is the kind of book you can take everywhere. I wouldn't even want to read it online. And I took it to Costa Rica, and I was sitting on this deck with my sister. Okay. She's, you know, I love my sister. We're very close. So she's sitting on, I said, I want to read you some of this book, you know. And she's like, okay. So I start reading the little koans, right, to her. I read it, and she gets up and she looks at me and she goes, I don't get it. And I laughed so much. I said, Helena, you are the most spiritual person I know. I said, you don't get it. Nobody, you're supposed to not get it. You know, I mean, we're not going to get it. Like, how can we get it? Anyway, it was just very funny. Now she always uses that. She goes, I don't get it. You know, every time she has to say something. And I tell her, that's because you're enlightened. There's nothing to get, you know. And, but you know what? I just thought when Jordan was speaking about his experience of reading that book and that word immersion, I think readitation for me is kind of an immersion experience. That's what it is. It's an immersion experience. And what's interesting is, obviously it's not an immersion experience with a piece of paper or a screen on a computer and little black dots on the piece of paper. It's not an immersion experience. Like, we're not, Victoria's, it can't be immersion reading the Victoria in terms of her face, her body, her thoughts. I can't be immersion. You know what I'm saying? They're just dots on a piece of paper, little lines and squiggles on a piece of paper, and some white wood that's been turned into something. That's what it really is. So what am I immersing myself in? What is the immersion experience there? And it's a really miraculous thing when you think about it, what reading is, and what, you know, I mean, listening is the same way, and seeing is the same way. It's amazing. And that's exactly what happens. And that what Anne-Marie referred to earlier about Dr. Mill's statement, he was, by the way, you can't imagine, really, we could not speak, we could not use the I, like to say, I am unhappy, I am tired, I am sick, To say that is using the Lord's name in vain. Thou shalt not use the Lord's name in vain. Well, the Lord's name, I am that I am. So if we say I am anything, I am tired, I am a bit groggy, we are using the Lord's name in vain. It's blasphemy. So it was like that. It was very hard to speak to him that way because, you know, although, yeah, he wasn't, it depended on the intention too. You didn't have to be, people got to be the letter of the law, you know, the letter of the law, but it's not like that. So he said, you know, you are the tastiness to the dish. And we are reading. We are the verb reading. I could say I am I could say I am reading, but that doesn't mean I'm doing the reading. Reading is what I am. And that's why that reading does what it does. That shift happens because of that, not because really of the mind. Anyway, it just came to me when that immersion and the way Jordan was speaking about his encounter with a little piece of paper, black dots on it. It was interesting. Anne Marie?
That's one of the main things that I appreciate about readitation is that we can explore these concepts together, and then we all can quote from the different resources that we're reading from that say the same thing as what we've all been saying, but just in a different way. You know, like with Wendy bringing in the poem from Kahlil Gibran on fear, is the fear of losing one's independence to the all, when all along it's like the fish who has no idea what water is. That, you know, all along the river was the ocean in the cycle of water. And I'd like to contribute to that thought with another book that I'm reading in Readitation by the Dalai Lama, An Open Heart. He says, if we examine our emotions, our experiences of powerful attachment or hostility, we find that their root is in an intense clinging to a concept of self. Such a self we assume to be independent and self-sufficient with a solid reality. As our belief in this kind of self intensifies, so does our wish to satisfy and protect it.
Beautiful. That is beautiful. Simply said.
Mm.
Yeah, that's really getting involved with the watercolor painting.
Yeah, what is the root? What is the root of our source of emotions, unhappiness, is separateness.
Linda?
And it's about clinging. It's clinging to wanting to cling to something.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of let go and flowing in the river, into the river, clinging to the shore or what's familiar. And you know, it's look at the root of family. I mean, familiar. Is there, Ron? I don't know. You're the word person. Is there the connect? I mean, could we look at this from the point of, you know, we're in a sense we're experiencing family here, and there's something familiar. This is in our immersive experience here. There is a family feeling here. And now look at the word familiar. And we want that familiarity. So is that clinging? I don't have any answers here, but it's just, I mean, exploring words. Because for me, a feeling of family and unity is just very special. And I think that I'd like to think that it's universal. But again, I'm throwing out this idea of a family is familiar, and we want to be in a place that's familiar.
Absolutely, Wendy. I just wanted to say, not only is our family familiar, but our relatives are relative.
Mm,
The word relative. Relative,
that's good.
relationships are relative. Yeah, it's familiar. So those words, yeah, it's relative, it's not absolute. Unity is absolute. Family as people is familiar. It's relatively true, relatively, but not absolutely. This is absolutely true. You're not a person of a nation, though. You're not your conscious experience primarily. So it's not, that it is it's incredibly in the language, all over the place. I mean, just like that, I used to think, oh, all my relatives are relative. It's only relatively true that they're good or bad, and what's going on. It's going to be, they're in duality because it's relative. Ron.
I'm going to look up familiar, the roots of that, as soon as we finish. But I think, Linda, you're describing real family. And real family, even beyond blood family, is something that we are right now. We are that which recognizes itself in another. That is family. That is our real family. And one of the poems I wrote has to do with that in us, which goes looking for itself in every other person. It's constantly looking to establish that harmony, almost as if it's throwing out a sonar, waiting for the echo of something in each of us that is tuned to the same frequency. So that's the family that you may be talking about, that I feel here. I feel here. I'm astonished at the way in which we are similarly but uniquely tuned to the same ocean.
Beautiful, Ron. Beautiful.
Very interesting point being brought up because, of course, I'm on these Unity Earth calls, Unity Earth, and I'm on the board there. We have board meetings and all sorts of meetings, and I'm always there thinking, what is unity? I think, when there are people who are very big activists, which is a great thing, they're activists and they just want to go ahead and make it happen and work on it and with the most beautiful spirit and the most beautiful intention. But, when I want to talk about the deeper sense of what unity really is, everybody's like, oh, well, that's great. But, when are we sending out the email for the, for the next event? And so I'm always trying to take that and move it a little deeper to really, because it's not an easy thing. I mean, family is a word we use here. I mean, we could look up what family is familiar, but unity, unity, wholeness, oneness, these words are they're humongous. And Dr. Mills always said, there's nothing between you and me. There's nothing between you and me. Nothing. And that was also not to gossip with everybody. It's really hard to say, listen, this is just between you and me. I want to tell you this very hard for me to do that. I can't do that because I do it, but I'm doing it, I'm going like, oh, but there's nothing between you and me, nothing, nothing, nothing. So yeah, that sense of unity, I'm always trying to see what that means. And I know it's nothing familiar. I know that because you know what? It's really interesting Linda brings up that word, because when I met Kenneth Mills, my second teacher, I'd been in the Gurdjieff work, many here know. And when I got there and I heard his unfoldments, his transmissions and messages, my mind would be looking for something familiar, always familiar. The mind, what is familiar to us, we agree with. When it's unfamiliar, we go, that's wrong. There's something wrong with that. It's not familiar to me. So that mind and familiarity. So I kept saying, and I did it innocently. I went like this, oh my God, this is just like the Course in Miracles. This is my just like teaching. This is just like the Course in Miracles. Oh my God, this is just like what Eckhart Tolle said in his book. Oh my God, this is just like this. This is just like this. And I look at Ron, I go, Ron, this is just like Gurdjieff when he talked about this. And this went on for like a while. And then one day I was saying, oh, Dr. Mills, this is just like blah, blah. And when I finished, she said, I'm glad you find things so familiar, dear. Well, maybe somebody would say, that's nice, but no, that did not go well with Victoria. That was not good. And then I talked to someone in the teaching and I said, I can't help it. It just all sounds like a lot of things. It's so beautiful. I was being complimentary, by the way. And the person said to me, well, why don't you just put that aside a little bit? And I did. And that's when something happened that I cannot tell you. That it took me from one direction. It changed my course completely. It did not deny the journey. It stopped the journey. It stopped the journey. It was like, yay, but I could have fun going into the play and going on the journey. I could still have fun doing it, but I never would have. How could I go on a journey when I've never left it? The journey, it's just impossible. I can't go find home when I'm sitting at home. I just can't. As I said, it ruined me for process. But that's what happened when I stopped finding things familiar. I think familiarity in relationships is it can be very detrimental to a relationship. The newness is what's great. So, because the newness is new, it's not even, in familiarity. So I don't know, there's a lot of things bringing up all these great words that have so much in them, but unity cannot be familiar by that reason. It is familiar, this feels soft and fuzzy and nice and warm and I love you and you love me. That can't be the whole of it. There's got to be something greater. Imagine unity, how great it must be, how great it is. Unity in the whole universe. It's not unity Earth, it's unity the cosmos, it's unity life. It's life. Great.
Can I share a reading?
Yeah.
So I was gonna share something else, but actually, I think this is, I think it might be appropriate. You could tell me if it's not. It comes from Neil deGrasse Tyson's book called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, which I thought was funny because I love astrophysics, but I don't have the brain to understand astrophysics from the astrophysics level. So I like the concepts, and I like to see how the concepts relate to spiritual concepts that I've been hearing for most of my life. But this is from the greatest story ever told, this first chapter. I'll just read the 2 short paragraphs. I'm sure you've heard this before in some other way, but I read this and then I think about the origin of everything in relation to that question of unity. So he says, in the beginning, nearly 14 billion years ago, all the space and all of the matter and all of the energy of the known universe was contained in a volume less than 1 trillionth the size of the period that ends this sentence. Conditions were so hot, the basic forces of nature that collectively describe the universe were unified. Though still unknown how it came into existence, this sub-pinpoint size cosmos could only expand rapidly in what today we call the Big Bang. And then he does go on to say that the ultimate question is, what is prior to this sub point? Because physics always talks about the Big Bang as starting from everything coming from that very, all of existence, all of us, all of our bodies, all of the trees and rivers and oceans, everything was in that little point, apparently. How they know that, I have no idea. Maybe Ron can tell us how they know that, but that to me is just the thought of that physically is an unbelievable thought. And then what was prior to that, as he goes on to talk about later on, I thought was a really interesting point.
Ron, go ahead.
I have to
Yeah.
comment on this. And to relate it also to the original question, discovery and readitation. I'm going to talk about the very little points, very little points. And I have to say that Wendy, in her readings, mentioned a book, The Quantum Revelation. And so I had been reading several books about quantum physics. So I grabbed onto this book. And I have to say that this book has changed something very fundamental in me. It has made such an impact relative to the whole idea of unity and what we are and the potential that we have is beyond anything that we normally imagine when we speak of unity in its highest sense. This is so far beyond it. And this book, The Quantum Revelation, which I would recommend to anyone to read, it may get technical at points, you just skip that. But it speaks of the concepts, of the basic ideas of what quantum physics has found and is challenging us to develop even the willingness to consider. It's not mind altering. It alters the sense of who and what we are and how intimate and close we are to the process of creation itself. I just want to read it inspired me to keep writing. I wrote all kinds of things about the book, which goes back to the whole way in which I read. Every reading is an inquiry. If I really love a book, if I get into it, it has to relate to my ongoing experience and to my questions that are inside me all the time. So it is a series of, it's an experiential journey. Every reading like this, when I find it an important book. Anyway, this book is about very small things that Craig mentioned. It's about the most basic building elements of everything, of the entire universe, of ourselves, these basic particles. And it inspired me to write this very long poem, which I'm only going to read you one or two verses because it gets a little strange. This poem is called Quantum. In the dark, echoing depths of our muted knowingness, a treasure resides guarded by the dragon of our own hesitancy to confront what lies beyond our imagination's imprisoned reach. We have populated our universe with Earths rounded, solar families embracing, galaxies whirling, and black holes rebirthing. Extended spacious sightedness from Galileo to Hubble to the secret layers of dark matter itself. I'll stop there, but I think you get the idea. This thing just went on. This is perhaps the longest poem that I've written. But this is what readitation does. You hit a book like this and it changes you. It can really, really change you. And I'm very grateful to Wendy for having mentioned it. It's been fantastic in terms of revealing our relationship to creative process itself. We are indispensable. We are so intimate with the creative process itself that we can't even think how intimate we are in creating reality every instant. So I just recommend this, and this is what READITATION can do. I mean, it's, you find something, someone recommends it to you, as we have done here. We have shared these ideas and books, and it's fantastic.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. I just wanted to say that, you know, I know we're doing READITATION now, a text group, and it's on Facebook, and people in Vistar, when we had our meetings in Vistar for 18 years, people all read half an hour in the morning. We actually had phone calls to start and finish because there was no texting. It was pre-text. So we made contact on the phone. But I want to tell you, before that, long ago, once upon a time, long, long ago, Ron and I were in teaching for 12 years with a teacher named Charles Ahart. And when I entered that teaching, I was at the bottom of my life. And he told me that I would, if I wanted to be part of the program, that I would have to read 2 hours every morning, back to back, 2 hours. And there was no way, there was no reason for me to say no, because I was at the end of my life. It was the end of my life as I knew it at that point. And I started reading every morning, 2 hours. And I found out the entire participants in that program, all of them, read every morning for 2 hours. Even those that went to work, like they read it from 5 to 7 or 6 to 8, and I went to work. Everybody read for 2 hours. It was a serious, you couldn't, if you didn't do, if you weren't willing to try to do that every day, you wouldn't be part of that program. And, you know, I read for 2 hours every day. I hated it, but it was a practice. You know, it wasn't what it is now. And I just want to tell you that when I went in there, I was diagnosed clinically depressed. A week after I started reading and being in that program, I woke up and was in what they call a pink cloud, was in a graceful state for about 2 years before it even left. Everything left me. The change was overnight and dramatic. And reading was part of it. And we read for 12 years I was there, and they read before me. And this was a continuing thing. He would always ask, are you reading? So the reason I say this is, I don't usually say this, but this is such a wonderful group who are so attuned to this, that reading stopped people from taking drugs. It got people to stop smoking. It stopped people from having migraines. I mean, it was unbelievable. You know, I had friends who got depressed, and I said, well, if you read with me, read with us 2 hours. And they said, I'm not that depressed. So they weren't. But for those who were like really what they call a bottom, just did this. And he would just say, are you reading? And I would go, yes. And that reading just, see, that permeates me. That's why it's kind of my way. I have had a lot of my realizations, not totally, you know, there's a whole program that we had in Vistar also, but a lot of it came from the reading. And I'm very, like, I read for being. I don't, you know, there's just, whatever I'm going through, if I read, afterwards I'm shifted. So it's a continual thing. I just wanted to say that because there's a background to it. And if you believe that things are paid for, like, you know, he said that to us, you're paying for something. So now it's a half an hour. It's, you know, the people who labor in the fields first have to do it it was 2 hours. And now, I don't know, if everybody did it for 5 minutes, maybe they would get some of that energy. So I just wanted to say that about it so that it would be, you know, for you guys, because most of you know that, but I just wanted to put it on this recording. Linda, I'm sorry, you had your hand up.
Well, as I said before, I had a stroke in my left eye, and so I am very compromised in capacity to read. It's a strain because this eye is working too hard, and so, but I listen to a lot of things, and a year ago, this past June, I listened to The Infinite Potential about David Bohm. I don't know if you know that, but that was one of these kinds of wake up calls for me. So for what reading is doing for you as you're describing it, Victoria, I hear things. I mean, I've always been like listening to Alan Watts, or I get things through here. And so I feel like I can't join. I don't do text. I'm not really a candidate for what you're putting out here. So I'm not sure how I would fit in, except that I do feel in spirit I'm totally here. But I'm doing the reading through my ears instead of through my eyes. And I'd love to I'm not always available, but I thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, Linda, it's totally fine. I mean, absolutely. I mean, my God, we couldn't limit it to reading, whatever. This is just this. I mean, listening, I know in Kenneth Mills Foundation, most people receive more from listening than reading and whatever.
Mhm.
That's beautiful. And I mean, there is no structure here that is confining. So,
Okay,
if there's something you want to do, we can, I mean, you're here with us. You're completely an honorary member.
thank you.
And nothing could keep us from being with you, so that is very beautiful. Anyway, so I think we need to end our time together. I was going to put up another doodle so you could see our doodles. We don't quite know what to do with them. If anybody has any ideas, we did a whole bunch of these doodles with poetry. We want to make a little video out of it, but we've got to put something in between, and we've got to put some music or maybe some reading. I don't really know, but we're working on our website, and hopefully, we're going to have a launch, and we'd love to have you all speak on it, and all the things like this, especially Readitate what we're doing. But I'll just show you another poem, and we can just enjoy that together. They say Ron writes a lot of really fun poems. A lot of them are serious, and a lot of them are very mystical, but some of them, look at this. So I love this because, I love that each of us is a periscope. Each of us is a periscope lowered by God into this world. So why not clear the view and let God have a blast? I just think it's really, really funny. So how do we clear that view? Let's take a minute, just each of us, and so each of us is a periscope. We're lower down. We're not in the world because we're a periscope. It's like a submarine it's not above water, and they bring something up. Well, we're somewhere above the world, and we're a periscope, and we're lower down into this world. And yeah, we need to clear that view and let God have a blast.
By the way, periscopes are usually raised, not lowered.
Right. I know, but that's why I say we're not, in this poem, we're definitely not a person living in the world. We're a periscope. Periscope is a seeing. Seeing, we are a seeing lowered by God. We are looking lowered by God into this world. Let me just take this off. Anyway, so maybe there's nothing to say. We could just go around and be periscoping. Because we're a verb, we're not a noun. Go out around and look at things and say, I'm not a person looking, it's just looking. It's just looking is looking. Looking is looking. Looking is looking. I just go around saying that. It's a lot better than what my mind is saying.
I just want to add one thing here. to explain my sudden absence after my impassioned talk about the quantum revelation. What happened is the cat pooped in my room, in the litter, not in my room, but in its litter, which is in my room. And I had to get up and take it out because the smell was so bad that it would have been catastrophic. So that is why I had to get up and leave. So I thought I would throw that in, you know.
Yes, this is catastrophic.
Yeah,
Catastrophic.
Catastrophic.
Yes.
Wonder if it was that way for him.
That's right. Okay. All right, I'll see you in another month and we'll hearing you on the ping. And Linda, if you want to listen sometime, if you want to be part of the text group, I could show you how to do that. I'm telling you, you could do that. Because the reason I know that is because I do it. And you could do it. You could text that. It's a phone thing. And then you could listen and just say, I'm listening to, if you want to, but no problem.
Yeah, but I mean, she can join us. Linda, you can join us you may not be able to read, but you can hear
Mhm.
or whatever.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then you can join the text group, I believe, by doing it on the microphone. I think there's a microphone.
No, Ron, she doesn't text, so she'd have to.
No.
I'm not set up for texting at all.
Boxing, so you can't access the microphone.
I don't have any clue about how to do that.
Oh, all right,
Okay.
okay.
Okay,
we can get on.
we've gone to the moon and we've gone into outer space. We could solve this.
I think we
It
discussed.
needs to be solved. I think it's okay, but it's
Yeah.
catastrophic, Ron. It really is. It's catastrophic.
Well,
Okay,
I felt guilty.
okay.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.